In this movie I want to take a look at the Vectorworks Macintosh interface, and there's a separate movie for the Windows interface. I guess the first thing you want to do when you launch Vectorworks for the first time is to make sure that you're using the workspace or environment that is appropriate for the module that you've purchased. And you can do this by going to the Tools menu, down to Workspaces, and then if you've purchased Vectorworks Designer, then you'll be using a Designer workspace, Fundamentals, Landmark, Architect, and so on. And that will get you the tool sets and things that are appropriate for the module that you've purchased. On the left hand side here we have the tool palettes. Across the top we have the toolbar, and around in other parts of the drawing we have what we call palettes. Here we have the Object Info palette, the Resource Browser, Attributes palette, and Snapping palette, and so on, and I'll explain each of these in more detail as we go along. Let's begin by looking at the tool palettes. These palettes, in fact all palettes, can be opened and closed by clicking the little button here in the corner. If you do close a palette, for example if I close the Visualization palette by clicking that little cross in the corner, then I can open that palette or any other palette by going to the Window menu, to Palettes, and choosing the one that I want to reopen. In this case it's Visualization. You'll also notice in the Window menu that I get a list of open documents, and I can use this menu to switch between other files that are open but are hidden or are behind the currently visible file. When looking at tool palettes, note that they can be viewed in a few different ways, and you can set the way that they're viewed by clicking this little downwards disclosure arrow at the bottom, and you'll see view icons, view as icons, icons and text, and also how they're sorted, and you can also customize them. This palette here is being viewed by icon. These tool sets are being viewed by icon and text, and the tool set icons at the bottom here are being viewed by icon only. And if I click on these ones, then I'll expose a different set of tools. For example, site planning, space planning, building shell, 3D modeling, and so on. If you hover over a tool, either a tool set or a tool icon, then you will get the name of it plus the keyboard shortcut that will activate that particular tool. If while hovering over a tool you also press the command key, then you will get an explanation of what that tool can do. So holding down the command key, I can move up here and I get a longer description of what that particular tool does. If I release the key, then I'll just go back to getting a description of the tool itself. Some tools will have a little disclosure triangle either to the right if viewing icon and text, or to the bottom right if viewing in icon. This means that there is more than one tool in that tool position, and all you have to do is to hold the mouse down and then a little menu will pop up showing you the other tools that are visible under that menu. Likewise here, if I mouse down here, you'll see that I get a choice of a couple of options for that particular tool. Now you can move tool palettes around by dragging them by the top, and they will kind of snap to the top corner and snap to each other. You can also change their shape by dragging the handle at the bottom, and with tool sets you're also able to tear them off So for example, if you wanted to do some dimensioning, if I click on this tool set here, which is the DIMS Notes one, and just click and drag it, you'll notice that I actually get that menu, and I can drag it out to whatever width that I want. So I get this as a separate menu. So if I was doing some dimensioning, I might temporarily open this up so that I can directly access those, even though I might be on a different tool set here. And if I want to switch this to, say, icons, I can do that, and I'll get the full set of icons, and I could, for example, drag this out and get all of the dimensioning tools all across there. And once I'm done with using this, then I can just close it and it will just disappear. And if I want to open it again, I can come down here and drag it out, and it will drag out in the configuration that I last used it. You can tell when a palette has been torn off because it has that serrated edge along the top. When you see a scroll bar like this, it means that there are additional tools down the bottom of the palette that you might be missing, so you can scroll down to see those. Ultimately, once you become familiar with Vectorworks, then you probably want to switch to just icon view, because you can see more tools without having to scroll, particularly in the tool sets that have a lot of tools in them, like the DIMS Notes one. Okay, so that's the tool palettes. Let's now look across here at the toolbar. And once again, this bar across the top of the drawing here can be customized, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but by default, moving from the left, we have previous and next view buttons. So if you have changed view a few times, you can use the previous view button to jump back to the previous view, or move forward to the one that you were previously on. We then have the classes drop down menu, and here you'll get a list of all of the classes that are in the drawing. You can jump straight to the organization dialog classes tab by clicking this little button here, which I'll demonstrate. So we've jumped straight to organization and it's set to classes. Organization can also be reached via this menu item here, but it's quicker to click on this button. The same thing applies to layers. We have a layers drop down here, and we can jump to the layers tab in the organization dialog by clicking that button there. If you have multiple design layers, then they will be listed here. If you also have sheet layers, then the sheet layers will be listed first, then there'll be a light grey bar across the drop down menu, and then the design layers will be listed below that. This button here is to look at the working plane. This is to set the active plane, and if you're doing purely 2D drawing, then you'll probably want to set that to screen plane. Here we have saved views. Then we have three buttons here. Fit to page, that will zoom you out so that it fits into the current page setup. This is fit to objects. This will zoom you out so that you can see all of the objects in your drawing. If you have an object or objects selected, then it will zoom in to just those selected objects. This option here allows you to zoom in, or as the shortcut says, zoom out if you press the option key. This one here sets the current zoom of the drawing, and you can also choose a zoom level here. Obviously there are other methods to zoom in and out using the mouse and so on. This here is the working plane mode. Here we have the 3D views, the standard 3D views. So again, if you're not working in 3D at all, you can remove this, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. This set of options here is identical to the set of options here under standard views here. Here we have a render menu, And once again, if you're not doing rendering or working in 3D, you can remove this render menu. So how do you control what appears up here? Well, you do that by clicking on this little icon on the right hand side here, and anything that is in the list will have a tick beside it or a check mark. And if you don't want to, say for example, have the render mode there anymore, then I can just choose that again, and you'll notice that the render mode disappeared from here. If I want the top plan to disappear, then I'll just go to standard view, choose that, and that will also disappear. Let's bring those back again just by going to render mode short and standard view. If you don't need to see the zoom percentage, then you'll also see there's a zoom long and a zoom short. So if we set to zoom short, then we won't get the actual percentage. One thing that you may want to put in here is rotated view, and this allows you to rotate the drawing for drafting purposes. The next section along here displays different modes depending on which tool you have selected. So currently I have the 2D 3D selection tool, and so these are the options for that particular tool. If I choose another tool like the polygon tool, then I'll get the options for the polygon. If I choose the polyline tool, I'll get those options. If I choose the select similar tool, I'll get those options, and so on. On the right hand side here are some shortcuts that I can add or remove. This one here is black and white only. You'll see if I click it, the drawing will switch to black and white only. If I click again, the color will come back. This one is show other objects while in groups. This one is zoom line thickness. And you can add or remove these from this drop down menu here. So these are the options that you can add: autosave, black and white only, data bar and edit groups, and so on. Zoom line thickness. You can also directly access document preferences and Vectorworks preferences from this drop down menu. So if I choose to remove zoom line thickness, I just choose that and it will disappear as one of these options. If I add it back in again, it will come back here. The order that these appear here is controlled by the order that you add them. Okay, let's look at the object info palette. When you select an object, depending on the object you select, information about that object will be displayed in the object info palette. In this case it's a text block, so it says here at the top, this is a text block. Make sure that you're looking at the shape tab. The shape tab is generally what you will have this set to. If I draw a rectangle, then you'll see here it will say rectangle, and I'll get the width and height of the rectangle, its position on the drawing, its rotation, and so on. So depending on the object I have selected, the object info palette is going to populate in response to that choice. Now there's also a data tab here, and if you're entering record data, then you can do that via the object info palette on the data tab. This is also where you can name an object. And finally we have the render tab here, and if this was a 3D object, then I'd be able to apply render settings to this object. The resource browser, we have a separate movie on the resource browser, but I can drop down any of these rolled up menus by either double clicking in the title bar or by clicking this plus or minus button here. If I click minus, it will roll up. If I click plus, it will roll down. If I use the double click instead of using these buttons, then it will preserve the width and length that I had previously set. So with navigation, double click that, it will roll down. You can position these anywhere you like. If you've got a larger monitor, then they can be off to the side and open all the time. Visualization palette. This allows you to control lights and cameras, so again, if you're not working in 3D, then you don't need to have that visible. The navigation palette allows you to interactively turn layers and classes on or off. Layers on or off, change the layer options and class options. It allows you to look at sheet layers, viewports, saved views, and also if there were any references in the drawing. And one of the important things to utilize in Vectorworks is the two buttons on your mouse. If you have a conventional Mighty mouse, then it may or may not be configured to have right button clicking differently to the left button, but if it isn't, then you'll want to go to your system preferences, and I'll show you how to do this, and go to keyboard and mouse, and under mouse you'll want to have this not set on primary button but have it set to secondary button. That's the preferred option, primary button and secondary button. And if you have it set up like that, then you'll be able to right click on things like a class name and jump directly to new, edit, duplicate, delete, activate, and so on. Same with a layer, right click on that. Same with save sheets, same with save views, and so on. You're able to do lots more. Other things you can do with right clicking. If I right click up here in the mode bar, you'll see that I can jump directly to document and Vectorworks preferences and get the same options as I get by clicking in this menu here. Likewise up here, these options I can get by right clicking anywhere up here. If I right click in space on the drawing, then I'll get the what are known as the contextual menu items, and these are general things that will affect the like document settings and units. If I right click on a specific object, then I'll get a different set of options, some of which are appropriate to an object rather than a general setting. So for example, if I had two rectangles and I selected them both and then right clicked, I could choose add surface. I have the send commands here, I have the rotate commands here, compose, decompose, and so on. So to demonstrate, if I go add surface, that will add those together, and that's a repetition of something you'll see up here in the modify menu. So just a quicker way of accessing things using right clicking. So we have the constraint palette or the snapping palette here, and generally we recommend that you have these options turned on for that. There's very few cases where you would ever have snap to grid turned on, and I probably recommend that you leave that turned off unless you have a specific need to turn it on. The angle snaps are also optional. If you are one who likes to hold the shift key to force something to constrain, so for example, if I take the polygon tool and I start to draw a line, you'll notice that this isn't constraining itself because I don't have angle snaps turned on, but if I press the shift key, I can activate those angle snaps, and so that way the angle snaps don't interfere with other things I'm doing unless I want them to by holding down the shift key. If however I do have that constraint turned on, then you'll see that it will automatically snap without me having to hold any key down. So how you utilize that is up to you. And then we have the attributes palette, and this is the palette where you can control things like the fill color, the style of fill, no fill, solid fill, pattern fill, hatch, tile fill, gradients, image fills, and so on. You're also able to set the line weight here. If I choose line weight, I can bump up the line weight of the object. You're also able to set the object's opacity by clicking on the button here. If I make this opaque, you'll see that if I overlap it on something else on the drawing, I'm able to see through it to the objects below. And if this is a line or an open polyline, arc, or polygon, you're also able to control here whether there's an arrow on one or both ends. And if you have an arrow, you can then control the style of the arrow in this menu at the bottom. So this kind of controls the attributes of objects. And right at the bottom of this, you'll also notice there's a little drop down menu, and here you can set a couple of extra things, the most important being make all attributes by class or remove by class settings. So that should give you a pretty good idea of the Vectorworks interface. And as I said initially, you are able to customize this using the workspace editor, and if you do move your palettes around and so on, you're also able to use this command here, save palette positions, and this will save them for you.